The dust didn't move out here. Not anymore. No wind, no tremors, no tectonic breath beneath your boots. Just ancient stone, scorched by a long-dead sun and locked in vacuum silence. The kind of place where entire civilizations were forgotten not over centuries, but in single catastrophic moments. Which made it the perfect kind of hell for archaeologists like us, looking for dead empires no one wanted to remember. Corin adjusted his helmet visor, watching the horizon shimmer with heat from the dig site's plasma lamps. Another day, another ruin, another alien temple swallowed by time and sand. But this time, something was different. The readings had started spiking 2 days ago. Subsurface anomalies, energy signatures that didn't match anything logged in the Galactic Archive. Not even the old ones. The precursors that were already old when most modern species were still poking sticks into termite mounds. No one wanted to say it out loud, but it was there. In the way the crew moved slower, glanced over their shoulders more, argued more over trivial things. Something buried down there was wrong, and today they were going to hit it. "Rig, you ready with the cutter?" Corin asked, his voice distorted in the channel, dry and clipped. Hot and humming. Just say the word. They stood before what had once been a sealed crypt, now cracked open by drones and brute persistence. Faded glyphs, nothing anyone could translate, lined the arch. The metal door beneath was melted shut from the inside, not locked, not guarded, as if whatever had been inside wanted to stay in. The crew backed up as Rig stepped forward and triggered the cutter. Blue flame kissed the metal, a soft hiss escaping into the vacuum. No sparks, just slow, controlled melting as the door's integrity gave way. Corin's heartbeat ticked up. They all had implants, biometric regulators meant to keep stress down during discoveries, meant to stop things like fear. But no implant could fake the kind of silence that followed when the crypt opened and the first draft of stale, uncirculated air hissed out like a whisper from a forgotten grave. The chamber inside was pitch black. Not even the plasma light penetrated it fully. The walls swallowed light, absorbed it like hunger. And then, they saw him. It was a body. That was the first shock. The second? It was human. Perfectly preserved, arms crossed over his chest, face as calm as if he'd just taken a nap. No decay, no signs of cryo-freeze, no suit, no oxygen gear, nothing. Bare-chested, barefoot, and lying in a sarcophagus made of some material no one could identify. And he was still warm. Corin couldn't breathe, not because of fear, but because of something deeper. Something primal, something locked into the bone. "That's impossible," Rig whispered. We're 3,000 light years from Sol. There's no record of humans ever." "Shut up!" Corin snapped. He crouched beside the corpse, scanning it with his implant. DNA. Blood. Everything matched baseline human. Not even a hybrid. 100% Homo sapiens. "Maybe someone brought him here?" another tech offered. No ship logs, no buried wreckage, no footprints. Corin looked at the body again. And this place predates humanity's first tools by 100,000 years. Rig didn't say anything. None of them did. Because then the corpse smiled. Only slightly. Just a twitch. But they all saw it. And in that second, every rational theory collapsed. They hadn't found a corpse. They'd found a warning. No one moved. The stillness inside that tomb felt thicker than the vacuum outside, denser, heavier, like the very air rebelled against their presence. Corin's suit began hissing with slight thermal corrections as his body temperature spiked, and yet he couldn't feel it. All he could feel was that smile. A dead man doesn't smile. Rig stepped back slowly, the plasma cutter trembling in his grip. "We're leaving," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "I'm not sticking around for this. This is cursed. This is a bad dig. But no one followed. Corin knelt beside the sarcophagus again, the scanner in his glove flickering from interference. The readings were jumping, unstable. The man's body heat remained steady. Pulse? None. Brain activity? 0. But cellular degradation? Also 0. Like time had touched everything else in this ruin except for him. He reached out, hesitating an inch before his gloved fingers touched the corpse's chest. Warm. Firm. Too perfect. "Don't touch it," said Cato. The xenobotanist turned bone analyst for this mission. His voice cracked. "Corin, I swear, whatever this is, it's not dead." "No," Corin muttered, eyes fixed on the face. "It's worse than that. It used to be dead." That pulled a few heads his way. Rig cursed and backed out of the chamber entirely. "To hell with this. You want to prod some ancient ghost, you do it without me." Nobody stopped him. Maybe someone should have. Corin stood slowly, glancing around the tomb. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, non-human, no doubt. The language wasn't one that had ever been catalogued, but the structure, the layout, it looked familiar. Disturbingly so. It was built like a mausoleum. No, more than that. It was a prison. "Scan the walls," he ordered. "Now." Cato and 2 techs obeyed, setting up portable photonic scanners. The data began pouring in, and every second made it worse. They weren't in a building. They were inside something buried deeper than anything they'd ever encountered. The readings showed concentric layers of shielding around this tomb, all made from alien alloys, some of which hadn't existed for tens of millions of years. Whatever this man was, someone had locked him away, like a nuclear weapon. The kind you don't ever want someone to find again. "Corin," said Cato quietly, eyes glued to his display. "We just dated the outer structure. It's 87 million years old." Silence again. That wasn't possible. Earth was barely crawling with mammals back then. The earliest hominids wouldn't appear for another 85 million years. "Maybe the readings are corrupted," one tech offered, his voice hopeful. "Maybe we—" "No," Corin cut in. "We didn't find a corpse that doesn't belong." He turned back to the smiling man. "We found a corpse that never should have existed." The smile deepened, slight but unmistakable. Then, for the first time, the body exhaled. The crew scrambled back, screaming, stumbling over each other. The sarcophagus glowed with a faint pulse beneath the man's body, faint red lines tracing alien symbols along the edges. Symbols that didn't light up before. Symbols that had been waiting. Corin stood frozen. The man's eyes were still closed, but now there was movement beneath the lids, twitching, as if dreaming, as if coming back. He slammed a comm call to the ship. "I want full atmospheric quarantine protocols. Now nobody leaves orbit. I want a weapons team down here and an AI unit ready to—" The line went dead. No static, no interference. Just gone. Corin's heart dropped into his gut. He turned to the entrance where Rig had fled. He was gone, but not just out of sight. His biosignal wasn't showing on the HUD anymore, like he'd vanished into the void. They'd opened something that had been sealed for eons. And now, it was awake. The tomb didn't feel like a chamber anymore. It felt alive. The lights flickered along the walls, plasma arrays rated for a decade of uninterrupted burn, sputtering like candles in a hurricane. The symbols on the sarcophagus pulsed rhythmically now, sinking like a heartbeat. But it wasn't the man's. Because the man still hadn't moved. Not fully. Just that lingering smile. Just the twitch under closed eyelids. Everything else remained perfectly still. Corin's thoughts were screaming, but his body was locked in cold calculation. They needed data. They needed control. And above all, they needed to get out, not just of the tomb, but maybe off the whole damn planet. Cato, seal the chamber. I want a containment field. Maximum output. If that thing twitches again, I want it boxed in. No response from the ship, Cato muttered, voice hollow, hands flying across the field controls. All uplink nodes just went dead. Satcom relays are jammed too. The tomb had become a black spot in the galaxy. A dead zone. Or worse, a blindfold. Corin took a slow breath, his eyes never leaving the man. Try the ground relay backup. Fried. Looks like a pulse surge. Maybe when the corpse exhaled? Not a corpse, one of the junior techs whispered. She was young. Too young to be on a dig like this. Her helmet shook. That's not a body. It's a message. Corin turned toward her. What did you say? She swallowed, trembling. The carvings on the walls, they don't make sense line by line. But when I traced the pattern as a whole, it formed something else. A kind of map. A loop. Like a containment ring. She tapped the holograph hovering over her scanner. It showed the carvings from earlier. Abstract. Indecipherable. But when layered together, they formed a spiral of repeating symbols centered on the man's sarcophagus. A warning. Over and over again. And not in an alien tongue. It was in Proto-Latin, ancient Earth language, long before spaceflight, long before interstellar linguistics. One phrase repeated, "Do not wake the first." Corin felt like the air around him thinned, like his lungs forgot how to work. Cato stepped forward. Are you seeing this? That's human language. Dead human language. How the hell would that be carved into a tomb that's older than Earth's oceans? Corin didn't have an answer. None of them did. Then the tomb shook. Just once. A deep, resonant tremor, like a planetary sigh. The symbols flared bright red for a heartbeat, then dimmed. Something had pulsed underneath them. A power surge, or something worse. Not seismic, not tectonic. Intentional. They all turned back to the sarcophagus. The man's fingers had curled. That was enough. Seal it, Corin barked. Now. Cato slammed the commands. A containment field sparked to life, forming a glowing barrier between the sarcophagus and the rest of the chamber. The light crackled, buzzing with suppressed force. But the symbols kept pulsing. And now, so did he. The scans picked it up. Brain activity. A low hum, barely measurable, but steady. Intentional. He's thinking, Cato muttered. Number he's remembering, Corin said, almost under his breath. Then a sound rolled through the tomb, low and vibrating, not through the air, but through their suits, a kind of whisper, directly into their skulls. Each person staggered under the weight of it. Not words, not a voice, just a single image, a galaxy on fire. Human ships, ancient, impossible, ripping through space like knives, not exploring, not discovering, conquering, a spiral of destruction, star systems devoured, alien fleets crushed like insects, and at the center, that same smiling man, alive, crowned, drenched in blood. The vision vanished. Everyone fell to their knees. Silence. Then the man opened his eyes. They weren't human. Not anymore. No one spoke. No one could. Those eyes, open now, and glowing with something far older than starlight, locked onto Corin first. They didn't blink. They didn't move, just burned, gold and black like the center of a collapsing sun. Then, the man sat up. No sound. No struggle. His body moved like it had never stopped working. Muscles coiled under skin that had no right to be so flawless after untold millennia. Not a hint of stiffness. Not a breath wasted. He looked alive. No. He looked dominant. Corin's instincts screamed. Every logical thought fled. This was not a lost human. This was not a relic or a survivor. This was something that had once ruled. The containment field flared as the man's bare foot touched the floor. Energy surged upward, and then snapped in half like a twig. Gone. Like it never mattered. Cato stumbled back. The field. How the hell did he? Corin drew his sidearm, leveling it without a word. His hands didn't shake. He didn't blink, and he knew it wouldn't make a damn bit of difference. The man tilted his head slightly, eyes tracing the barrel of the weapon. Then he smiled again. A full, slow, knowing smile. "I remember that," he said. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the room like a command, resonant, calm, and terrifyingly familiar. Not through the comms, not through the air. It was inside them. "I remember your kind. Curious little flames." Corin didn't lower the gun. "What are you?" "I was the beginning," the man said, stepping past them. No one moved. "The fire that lit your evolution. The predator before your gods." Cato gasped. "You're not human." The man paused and looked back at them with something close to amusement. "I am more than human. I am what your kind was meant to become. Before you forgot. Before you got weak. Before they buried me." His eyes flicked toward the tomb walls. "The others tried to erase me. You weren't supposed to find me." He walked now, slowly circling the chamber, glancing at their tools, their weapons, their scanners like a disappointed father inspecting a child's failed art project. "I built empires before your star system had moons. I bled across galaxies, and when the lesser species tried to stop me, they didn't just kill me." He stopped, his voice hardening. "They collaborated. They joined hands and erased your bloodline from memory. Made you small. Made you forget." Corin's throat felt dry. The man-thing was telling the truth. Every instinct said so. "You're saying you were one of us?" "I was you," he said, stepping closer. "I am what your kind was before the chains." He reached out and touched Corin's chest with 2 fingers. The suit didn't stop it. The armor didn't matter. Images flooded Corin's mind again. Ancient humans, not crawling through caves, but standing atop towers of light, burning alien fleets from the sky, twisting gravity like clay, ruling with terror, with glory, with purpose, and at the center, this man, always smiling, always watching, a tyrant, a god, a ghost. "They called me the first king," he whispered, "and now, thanks to your foolish hands, I rise again." Cato screamed and raised his pulse rifle. The man didn't flinch. Cato fired. The round hit center mass and disintegrated. No blood, no wound. The kinetic energy vanished the moment it touched skin. And then, Cato exploded. Not from fire, not from force. He simply ceased, atomized mid-scream into a red vapor that evaporated before it hit the floor. The rest of the team froze. The man turned back to Corin, calm as ever. "You're lucky. You didn't try to kill me." Corin could barely whisper. "What do you want?" The man's smile faded. "I want my empire back." He looked upward, toward the planet's sky, where their orbital ship once hovered, where every signal had gone dark. "And I'm going to start with yours." The sky cracked. From deep below the planet's crust to the thinning atmosphere above, everything pulsed like a beating heart. His heart. The tomb had been the ignition point, but the reaction had already begun, far beyond the ruins. Corin could feel it in the ground. A slow rhythm, like something massive and ancient waking up, responding to his presence. as if the universe itself had held its breath for too long and now exhaled with violent clarity. The first king stood silent, eyes fixed on the heavens, and then, for the first time since his awakening, his smile faded completely. "They're watching," he murmured. Corin staggered forward. "Who?" The man's gaze didn't shift. "The ones who buried me. The ones who feared me more than death itself. They left watchers scattered across the stars, silent, patient, obedient." He raised his hand slowly, fingers curling toward the sky. His eyes closed. Somewhere above, in low orbit, the cruise ship, the Aegis Light, shuddered, or what was left of it. There had been no explosion, no attack, no alarm. It had simply ceased broadcasting, gone dark as if swallowed whole by space. And now, it returned. But not as it was. The cruise channel chirped to life for the first time since the tomb opened. Static, loud, chaotic, flooded their ears, followed by a high-pitched hum that forced everyone to their knees. Then, a voice. Not human, not alive. Reclamation protocol breached, containment failure. Corin forced himself up, helmet damp with sweat, ears bleeding under the noise. Incursion entity class. Omega, human signal confirmed. The voice looped, repeating phrases too fast to follow now. Data stormed across their HUDs, system overload, temperature spikes, gravity distortion warnings. Then a new shape appeared in the sky. A satellite. But it wasn't theirs. It looked older, scratched, deformed, encased in alien metal that gleamed with unnatural light. A construct from before recorded galactic history. And it was unfolding. Panels extended like wings. Spires rotated and clicked into place. And then, it fired. Not at the planet. Not at the ruins. At him. A beam of searing white energy roared from the heavens, piercing the sky like divine judgment. It hit the first king head-on. The ground split. Corin was thrown backward, smashing into a wall hard enough to dislodge a tooth. His visor cracked. Flames erupted across the outer walls of the tomb. Wind, impossible on this dead world, tore through the chamber, full of heat and plasma and screaming energy. And in the center of it all, he stood untouched. The beam faded. The satellite went dark. Melted. Dead. The first king raised his chin. "They still remember," he said softly. "But they have forgotten fear." Corin coughed blood into his helmet. His vision blurred. He looked around and saw what was left of his team. 2 techs were dead, vaporized like Cato. The young girl who'd decoded the carvings was curled behind a console, sobbing, her helmet shattered, eyes wide with shock. Riggs' body was nowhere to be seen, and the planet was no longer quiet. In the distance, the ground cracked open, slow and jagged. Pillars rose, massive black towers carved with the same script from the tomb. Ancient launch pylons, forgotten weapons, receivers. The first king turned slowly to Corin. "You've done well. I chose the right hands." "I didn't choose anything," Corin snarled. "Yes, you did," the man said, crouching down. "You came here. You ignored the signs. You kept digging." He tapped Corin's chest again. "You were meant to." A low thunder rolled across the sky. Not weather. Engines. Something was coming. But not human. Not yet. "The galaxy will send its guardians," the king said. "Its peacekeepers. Its cowards." He stood tall. "I will break them. And then I will remind humanity what it was born to be." The girl whimpered behind him. The first king didn't even glance at her. "She's yours to protect, if you can," he said, turning his back. Corin looked up, battered and bloodied. "What the hell do you want from me?" The man paused. Witness. Survive. And when the stars burn again, tell them who lit the match. Then, without a sound, he vanished. Not a step, not a blink. Just gone. The sky was on fire, not from atmosphere. This planet had none. But from the engines of ships, hundreds of them, tearing into orbit like a swarm of hornets. Corin watched from the ridge above the tomb ruins, his cracked visor barely holding together, eyes locked on the impossible dance of incoming war fleets. They weren't human. Sleek crafts with no visible propulsion, shaped like daggers and wings and bones. Alien species that had once ruled sectors of the galaxy now converging on this forgotten rock, all of them armed to the teeth. They weren't allies. They weren't a coalition. These were enemies of enemies brought together by one thing: fear of him. And they had come to kill what should never have returned. Corin leaned against a fractured stone, breathing hard. The girl, Mira, sat beside him, quiet now. Her cheeks were raw from windburn, eyes red from smoke and grief, but she was still here. Barely. He kept one arm around her shoulder, part survival, part desperation. She was the last living member of his team now. The First King hadn't needed to lift a finger to kill the rest. He just was. From the ridge, Corin could see the ruined tomb, and at the center of it, the empty sarcophagus, a black wound in time that had unleashed something the galaxy once thought buried. Mira finally spoke. "They're going to try to kill him, aren't they?" Corin didn't answer right away. He watched a cruiser descend in a tight spiral, its shields glowing with an inner light. Massive turrets unfolded along its hull, pointed downward. "They have to," he said quietly, "even if they know it won't work." She looked at him. Why not run? Why not hide until he goes somewhere else? Corin laughed bitterly. He's not going anywhere else. He is the war. If they don't stop him now, there won't be a next battle. There won't be a somewhere else. He'll burn through the stars until there's nothing left but ash. The air cracked, louder than before. The first strike hit, a direct plasma lance from orbit, the kind used to vaporize capital ships. It landed where the sarcophagus had been and erupted into a geyser of blue light that shook the mountain under their feet. Then came the kinetic shells, mass drivers slamming into the surface like artificial meteors, one after another. The planet groaned under the bombardment, throwing up clouds of dust and burning debris. The fleet didn't hesitate. They knew. They knew what was buried here. And still, he didn't fall. Corin saw him first, rising from the crater like a shadow of smoke and fury. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked through the fire. And where he walked, the ground split open and towers rose, massive obelisks of black metal humming with buried power. Ancient human tech, older than history, somehow still linked to him. Weapons born in extinction. Mira gasped. "Oh my God, he's calling them." He was. Across the planet, something had awakened. Other structures rising now, unlocking with ancient energy signatures that pulsed like his heartbeat. This planet wasn't just a tomb. It was a vault, a dead world turned war engine. And he had the keys. The First King raised one hand toward the sky. A ripple surged through the battlefield. The leading alien dreadnought, 3 kilometers long, armored with neutronium, bristling with railguns, froze. Then it twisted in on itself like a paper toy and imploded. Silence followed. The rest of the fleet hesitated. That was all it took. The First King launched into the sky, not with thrusters, not with wings, but as a streak of living energy. He passed through a second ship, carving it in half without touching it. And then the real slaughter began. Corin couldn't watch anymore. He dragged Mira to her feet. "We have to get off this planet. Now." She shook her head. "There's no way. Our ship's gone. Comms are dead. Nobody's coming." He looked at her, face grim. "We don't need a ship." He pointed to the sky. The enemy fleets were dying fast, but not all of them were out yet. One small carrier, damaged, listing sideways, was dropping escape pods. They were evacuating. He turned back toward the crater. They'd need to move fast. The window was closing. "You said he chose me, right?" Corin muttered. "Fine. Then let's see how far that choice goes." Mira gripped his hand tight as they ran. Every step toward the crater felt like defiance. Every breath felt stolen. But Corin wasn't just running from a god anymore. He was running to warn the galaxy. Because the first king wasn't rebuilding a kingdom. He was reclaiming an inheritance. The ground cracked beneath them as they ran. Not from missiles this time, but from something deeper. The planet itself was changing, waking up. As if the first king's presence had flipped some ancient switch, and now the entire world remembered what it once was. A weapon forged from stone and silence, waiting to be used again. Corin didn't look back. The air shimmered with heat and distortion. The sky boiled with light as alien cruisers died in quick flashes, their cores rupturing under invisible pressure. Whatever defense systems the planet held, whatever buried war tech had been left in slumber, they were no longer passive. They were his now. And the galaxy had no idea how badly it had just lost. Corin and Mira reached the edge of the basin where the remains of their dig camp once stood. Most of it had been leveled, smashed to rubble under orbital shockwaves, but the automated perimeter drones still blinked red and scattered in fragments. One comms relay flickered erratically. A pod-sized fragment of a downed alien scout ship lay nearby, half buried and sparking. Corin's eyes locked on it. "There," he said. "Escape pod. Small enough for two if we dump the nav AI and run it manual." Mira didn't argue. She was limping badly, one leg dragging, skin blistered from radiation flares, eyes glassy. But she moved. The desperation had overridden her pain. Corin yanked the hatch open. The inside was half fried. Cockpit screen melted, oxygen unit hissing. But the core thrusters were intact. He climbed in and reached down to pull her after. Then he froze. A shadow fell over them. Not from the ships, not from the burning towers behind them. From him. The first king stood less than 20 meters away. No sound, no tremble, just presence. Unavoidable, heavy, like a nightmare walking through reality. His skin was no longer pale. It shimmered now, dark bronze and flickering with veins of red light. Not just alive, activated. Corin raised his weapon out of instinct. His hand trembled. The king didn't speak at first. He just watched them. No rage, no urgency, just something that looked like pity. "You were always meant to leave," he said. Corin didn't lower the gun. "So you're letting us go?" "I'm not letting," the king replied. "I'm sending." Corin's stomach tightened. "Why?" The king stepped closer. "Because the galaxy needs time. It needs to remember. To fear again. And you," he pointed directly at Corin, "will be the one to remind them what they forgot." Mira whispered, "What? What did they forget?" The king looked at her gently. "That humans were never survivors." He looked back to the burning sky. They were apex predators. Evolution's final scream. We didn't adapt to live. We adapted to conquer, to dominate. And when the rest of the galaxy realized what we truly were, they buried us. He took another step forward. They left Earth, a seed, an exile, a false beginning. Your civilization, a lie built on the bones of kings. Corin shook his head. "Then why me? Why now?" The king's expression darkened. "Because I've already seen the future, and it ends in fire unless someone brings the truth back." Corin clenched his jaw. "I'm not your messenger." "No," the king said. "You're my proof." He reached forward and pressed a glowing finger to Corin's chest plate. Instantly, pain tore through Corin's body. Visions, memories, flashes of history, not his own. Ancient human warlords twisting time with their minds. Galactic species chained in orbit, entire planets silenced in seconds. The first king sitting on a throne of stars, smiling as the galaxy bled. And then, darkness. Corin collapsed against the pod, breathing like he'd drowned and surfaced. Mira screamed his name. He barely heard her. The first king turned away, walking toward the ruins once more. "Go now," he said without looking back. "Tell them. Let them prepare." "Prepare for what?" Corin gasped. The king looked over his shoulder. "For the second coming of man." He vanished into the dust. Corin stared at the sky, blinking tears from his bloodshot eyes. Mira pulled him into the pod, slamming the hatch. "You saw it," she whispered. "Yeah," he croaked, buckling in. She launched them with a desperate flick of switches. The pod lurched, rising violently into the fire-lit air. Corin watched the world shrink beneath them. The pillars, the tomb, the king. "They won't believe us," Mira said softly. Corin looked at her. "They don't have to." He closed his eyes as the stars took them. "They'll feel it." The pod tore through the void like a dying comet. Every system screamed at them. Oxygen at 18%, navigation failing, hull integrity barely holding. But it held long enough to breach the edge of controlled space, long enough for an automated patrol to lock onto their distress beacon, long enough for someone to hear them. Corin didn't remember much of the landing. There was fire, shouting, lights, armed guards dragging him from the cockpit, Mira screaming for help, and then everything went black. He woke in a decontamination cell, no windows, just pale white walls, humming quietly, sterilized and impersonal. Across from him stood two figures, naval intelligence officers from the Corps, gold-trimmed uniforms, sharp eyes, and suspicion thick enough to drown in. The older one spoke first. "Commander Corin Vell, we've reviewed your black box logs. No signal data, no satellite trace, no atmospheric recordings, just biological vitals and a hell of a stress spike." Corin said nothing. The younger officer leaned in. "You're telling us an ancient human built a weapon planet, walked out of his grave, and single-handedly obliterated a multi-species assault fleet?" Corin stared through him. "He didn't obliterate them." The man raised an eyebrow. "He allowed them to exist, until they annoyed him." The older officer folded his arms. "Do you understand how ridiculous this sounds? There's no trace of this first king, no verified evidence. The fleet command refuses to even acknowledge the engagement happened. That entire arm of space is now under classified lockdown. You walked out of a storm and brought us a myth." Corin leaned forward, eyes hollow. "Then you'd better start believing in myths, because they believe in you." The younger officer scoffed. "You expect us to prepare for war? Mobilize against a ghost?" "No," Corin said. "You should be begging for mercy." The older one turned off the feed and left without a word. The younger followed, but not before muttering, "Paranoid bastard." Days passed. They gave him quarters. Medical leave, they called it, which meant house arrest with surveillance. Mira was in a recovery wing across the station, alive, quiet, refusing to talk to anyone but him. She knew what she saw, what she felt, but nobody else wanted to listen. Then the reports began. Scattered systems in fringe sectors going dark, mining colonies wiped clean, no distress calls, no wreckage, just absence. As if something had moved through them without bothering to leave behind evidence of effort. Then came the visions, dreams, not just Corin's, soldiers, civilians. Even AI core clusters began reporting shared hallucinations. A man, a throne, a burning crown, always smiling. The dream would end the same way. Do not resist. You are always mine. Panic gripped the outer colonies. Ships went silent. Merchants rerouted. The Corps declared it psychological warfare from rogue alien factions. But Corrin knew better. He'd felt it the moment he saw the man smile. The first king didn't just return to destroy. He came to reclaim. And then, the final sign. The Terran relic, the oldest known human satellite, a rusted museum piece orbiting Sol for 3,000 years, broadcasted one final message before it disintegrated. Homo Imperatorum, the bloodline stirs, the king has returned. Every major government tried to bury the message, but it was too late. People remembered, not the lies they'd been fed about humanity being diplomats and engineers. They remembered the truth, buried deep in genetic memory, in nightmares older than stars. Humans weren't built to serve. They were built to rule, and their king had risen. Corrin stood before the viewing window, watching the stars drift by. Somewhere out there, behind gas clouds and shattered fleets and diplomatic lies, he knew the first king was building. Not armies, not ships, followers, not through fear, but through awe. Because out there, in the dying dark, the galaxy didn't need another savior. It needed a conqueror. And this time, humanity would not forget again. The end. Or perhaps just the beginning.